Evelyn, you didn't choose a new path. You just couldn't handle the one you were on. Some people build legacies. You? You're just desperate not to disappear. Words like that should never come from a mother. But when your own says them, the one who is supposed to believe in you, then listen up, Evelyn. This isn't just a video. This is the part where you stop shrinking to make them comfortable. Keep watching, because being dismissed is exactly where your story starts to matter. The table was long, dressed in white linen and polished flatware. My seat, as always, was the one closest to the wall, wedged between a disused sideboard and a baseboard heater that hadn't worked in years. I set my coat over the back of the chair and lowered myself in slowly, feeling the chill seep through my dress. No one looked up. I'd arrived 10 minutes early. Not because I was eager. Habit, mostly. There was a time I used to arrive exactly on time, thinking maybe it would earn me a nod, a look, some proof I belonged. Now I just preferred to leave before anyone noticed I was there at all. Waiters bustled between tables, and the soft clinking of glasses painted a holiday murmur through the dining room. My family occupied a private alcove near the back, the kind of curated space that signaled importance. Important people, important stories, just not mine. My mother was already directing a waiter about wine temperature, hair curled into an almost mathematical wave, voice clipped and clear. She wore emerald earrings I'd last seen at a fundraiser. She always reserved her best jewelry for moments she considered performative. Holidays, charity galas, photo ops. Thanksgiving in our house was just another stage. "You didn't do anything with your hair?" she asked without turning, barely glancing at me. Her lips formed the shape of a smile but didn't quite arrive. "That dress is understated." I nodded. I didn't tell her it was the only one I still owned that zipped clean, or that I'd chosen it because it didn't demand space. I never competed with the silverware. "Evelyn." My father's voice was a low acknowledgement, like a clerk ticking off an attendance sheet. He sipped his wine and resumed scrolling on his phone. Ethan arrived 15 minutes late, of course, and the room shifted the second he walked in. My mother rose. My father pocketed his phone. Lauren, trailing behind him in soft beige cashmere, smiled as she unwrapped her scarf, already folded into their rhythm. Ethan leaned down to kiss my mother's cheek, then clasped my father's shoulder with one of those exaggerated grins men wear when they believe they've earned the room. "Promotion just went through," he announced, like a headline. "VP of Business Integration. $250,000 salary bump." Glasses clinked. Lauren laughed politely as if she hadn't heard the announcement twice already on the ride over. I caught her eye briefly, gave a small smile. She returned it, warm but distant, the way people are to the one name they've heard in family conversations but never fully placed. "Did you drive in from Portland?" Lauren asked me gently, settling into the seat beside Ethan. "Flew." I took a sip of water. Red eye. "How's your—" She paused. "I mean, what are you up to these days?" Before I could answer, Patricia cut in. "Evelyn's doing some little tech thing with seniors, like Zoom classes or helping people with phones. She didn't want to do medicine anymore." The phrasing landed like an afterthought, dressed in a soft laugh. I didn't correct her. Dinner came in small courses, appetizers nobody touched. A turkey that had been brined to the point of disintegration, cranberry compote so bitter it tasted like penance. Ethan spoke animatedly about an off-site in Austin. My father asked questions. My mother filled in gaps. I chewed slowly and nodded when someone looked in my direction. When the time came for gifts, I reached under the table and slid a wrapped paperback across the linen. "Just something small," I said. My mother accepted it with the strained enthusiasm of someone receiving a fruitcake. She placed it beside her charger and didn't unwrap it. "Is it one of those self-help books?" she asked. "It's poetry," I said quietly. "Oh," she replied, and then moved on. Lauren complimented the roasted Brussels sprouts. Ethan joked about our old high school principal. The conversation kept rolling. Over me, around me like water circling a drain that never quite emptied. Dessert arrived in a plume of vanilla and orange zest. My mother dabbed the corner of her mouth with a linen napkin and sighed. Shame Evelyn didn't stay in med school, she said into her creme brulee. She had such a promising start. I was still sitting there. I looked down at the plate in front of me. I hadn't even broken the sugar crust. Across the table, Lauren's gaze flicked toward me. It lingered. Not long, not searching. Just long enough to register a gap in the rhythm. She smiled, polite, unaware. I held her gaze. Not to accuse, not to challenge, just to exist. Later that night, back in my hotel room, I kicked off my shoes and sat cross-legged on the bed. The glow of the bedside lamp felt harsher than usual. I reached for my phone, idly clearing notifications. One subject line caught my eye. Thank you from Ruth. Sent by Lauren Carter. I didn't open it right away. I just stared at the name. The same warmth, the same distance. Only now, something else was slipping through. Some people announced their comeback. I just kept building until someone noticed. The window beside my bed had started frosting at the corners again, a delicate spread of white where the Portland rain met the morning chill. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and moved toward the kitchenette, lighting the stove beneath my too-slow kettle. Downstairs, the flower shop was already humming, the faint thump of buckets shifting, the scent of eucalyptus rising through the floorboards like a quiet offering. The library session was set for 9. I arrived 10 minutes early, like always. Habit. The staff knew me by name now, even though they still introduced me with awkward reverence to newcomers. Evelyn helps with tech stuff, as if I hadn't been organizing the program since midsummer. I didn't correct them. Titles were always someone else's game. In room B, the folding chairs had been set in a wide semicircle. Mrs. Denning was already seated, clutching her floral tote like it might float away. Beside her was Tom, a retired airman who never brought notes but always brought questions. Marisol arrived right behind me, clutching her tablet and coffee like a lifeline. USB booting tutorial today, right? She asked, eyes bright under the fluorescent lights. That's the plan. I nodded. We began with questions, passwords, browser tabs, accidentally deleted files. Marisol roamed gently among them, offering reassurance with the patience of someone who still believed everyone could learn anything. I watched her explain drag and drop to a woman who had once believed her laptop was broken because the cursor looked angry. Halfway through the session, Tom raised his hand. Miss Evelyn, he said, voice trembling a little. I sent an email to my son last night. Didn't ask my neighbor to help, just did it. Got a reply this morning. He called me tech wizard. He chuckled. Then his voice broke. Haven't heard him laugh like that in years. There was a pause in the room, small but holy. I offered him a nod, just enough to say you did that. Afterward, as the others filed out, Marisol lingered. Would you mind if I asked a few questions? She said. For the Civic Engagement Project, I'm supposed to feature someone who's impacting tech equity in the community. Shouldn't take long, she added, sensing my hesitation. We sat on 2 beanbags near the youth reading area, surrounded by alphabet rugs and faded posters of dinosaurs holding books. How did you start BrightBridge? She asked, her stylus hovering. I gave her the safe version, the one with clean lines and no loose threads. After I left medicine, I began, I wanted to build something useful. Something that made people feel like the world hadn't left them behind. Her eyes flickered up. Wait, you were in med school? Residency, I corrected. Internal medicine. She tilted her head. Why'd you leave? I smiled politely. Because I wanted to breathe. She didn't push. She just nodded and moved on to questions about accessibility features, plugin design, and how we translated UI elements for low-vision users. I appreciated her instinct, knowing when to dig and when to leave fossils untouched. Later that night, I returned home and slipped my laptop onto the desk beside the wooden USB stick I always kept within arm's reach. I opened the admin portal for BrightBridge and queued up one of the newer testimonial videos. Part routine, part reminder. This one had arrived last week. A woman in her late 20s sat beside a white-haired elder on a paisley couch. The younger one had soft eyes, a calm presence. "This is my grandmother, Ruth," she said to the camera. "She lost her husband this year. It's been hard, but thanks to BrightBridge, she video calls us every Sunday. She even orders groceries on her own now." The older woman leaned into the frame, gave a crooked smile. "You helped me feel human again," she said. I paused the video, stared at the still frame. The granddaughter looked familiar. Something about the tilt of her head, the cadence. Lauren Carter. I closed my laptop gently and leaned back, hand over my chest like I needed to hold the air inside. That night, I dreamt in Hospital White. May 2024. Break room. I was still wearing scrubs. Still hadn't slept. My body was a machine on autopilot. Treat, chart, code, repeat. I had skipped lunch again. I couldn't remember the last time someone had called me by name without asking for a vitals update. I remember sitting on the floor, knees drawn in, the overhead light buzzing. My attending walked past the break room, glanced in, and kept walking. I think that was the moment I knew. The day I left, no one stopped me. I folded my white coat, placed it in the back of my closet, and sat in silence for 3 hours. My mother didn't call. My father didn't text. Ethan sent a thumbs-up emoji. I was a gap in their story now, something they edited out without adjusting the timeline. The kettle whined, pulling me back to the present. I reopened my inbox. Lauren had sent another message. Subject: "Just wondering, hi again. Not sure if this is strange, but I feel like we might be related. Are you Ethan Brooks' sister?" I stared at the blinking cursor, heart thudding in my throat. Then I whispered it, just once, into the still room. Ruth. Her name sounded softer out loud than it did in the video. And yet it landed like gravity. She wasn't just a user. She was someone Lauren loved, someone I'd helped without knowing, someone who unknowingly built the bridge back to the part of me I thought I'd buried for good. When my mother tells me what to wear, it's never a suggestion. It's erasure in silk. The email arrived 2 days before the flight. Subject line: dress guidance. Attached, 3 Pinterest images of women with soft curls and cream-colored dresses. Breezy, feminine, forgettable. A single line beneath them. Nothing too bold. No pantsuits. Something appropriate for the venue. I didn't reply. She wasn't asking. The green dress had been hiding at the back of my closet for years. I pulled it out gently, shook off the dust, and laid it flat on the bed beside my duffel. It was the one I wore to the state science fair, the one Mom had picked because it made me look clean and academic. That night, I won first place and was quoted in the Tribune. She'd framed the article, cropped out my quote, and kept only the photo. The dress still fit mostly. I adjusted the hemline, shortened it by an inch, let it hit just below the knee. Quietly defiant. The zipper stuck once near the ribs, but I didn't ask for help. I hadn't needed help in a long time. Ethan sent out the RSVP email the next morning. Group CC. Names listed like furniture inventory. Patricia, Gerald, Aunt Susan, Helen Marlowe, +1s. I was there too. Evelyn Brooks. No salutation. No message. The flight was uneventful. Chicago in January felt like an argument between wind and concrete. The cab dropped me at the hotel. I didn't bother unpacking. I laid out the green dress on the bed again, this time next to a small wooden USB drive. I didn't plan to use it. I just liked knowing it was there. My phone buzzed that night. Mom. Just don't bring up your website thing too much. Lauren's family is very accomplished, Ivy League types. I typed a response, deleted it, typed again, then settled on. Got it. She didn't catch the sarcasm. She never did. The next afternoon, I arrived 10 minutes early. Habit. The restaurant glowed with the kind of expensive subtlety that smelled faintly of lemon oil and legacy. The hostess led me to the private room in the back. 12 seats, brass sconces, crystal water pitchers. My place was at the end of the table, near the emergency exit and the spare tray of silverware. I poured myself water, smoothed my napkin, breathed. Guests began trickling in. Patricia kissed cheeks. Gerald offered stiff nods. Aunt Susan waved absently. Lauren entered just behind Ethan, arm linked through his, cheeks pink from the cold. She caught sight of me, smiled with warm eyes, and crossed the room. "I love your dress," she said, sincere. "Thanks," I replied. She sat diagonally across from me. Her coat shimmered faintly in the low light. Pale gold, understated. People filtered in and out of my periphery. I nodded when spoken to. I let the conversation pass over me like a tide I no longer fought. Dinner began. Toasts flowed. Ethan's boss shared a story about market expansion. Lauren's father spoke of family traditions like they were inherited artifacts. My mother laughed politely. No one asked me to speak. No one asked me anything. Until Lauren did. She leaned across the table, brow knit in curiosity. "Evelyn, I've been meaning to ask. What do you do again?" I sipped my water, steady and slow. "I run a digital platform that helps older adults stay connected," I said. She tilted her head. "Like Zoom classes?" "More like adaptive systems for long-term engagement. Voice input, large print, screen readers." She blinked. Her lips parted slightly. "Wait, what's it called?" I didn't smile. I didn't pause. "BrightBridge." Her eyes widened. She leaned back in her chair, breath catching in her throat. "No. No way. You're the founder?" Some truths don't land like thunder. They hum until silence gives way. Lauren stared at me like the air between us had cracked. Her voice was soft but stunned. "You're the founder?" I nodded once. No smile, no flicker of triumph. Just truth, settling into the open like steam from a teacup. Quiet, undeniable. A slow hush spread across the table. The murmur of silverware faltered. Champagne bubbles fizzed in untouched flutes. Patricia froze with her glass halfway to her lips, fingers clenched too tightly around the stem. Lauren straightened in her chair, breath shaky. "Everyone," she said, turning slightly, her voice rising not with force but with clarity. "This is Evelyn. She created BrightBridge, the platform that helped my grandmother Ruth stay connected before she passed." A beat. The name fell into the room like a stone into still water. Forks paused midair. Heads turned. Someone coughed lightly, as if clearing the throat of disbelief. Helen Marlowe blinked. "Wait, Patricia told me Evelyn dropped out, that she couldn't handle the pressure." Patricia said nothing. I didn't flinch. I looked straight at her. She didn't meet my gaze. Her eyes had gone glassy, like someone reading lines from a script suddenly realizing the scene had changed. Ethan shifted in his seat, unsure if he should look at me or at the spectacle unfolding beside him. He chose neither. Lauren's cheeks flushed as realization crawled across her expression. Ruth thought the world had left her behind. She said your program made her feel seen. Human again. She turned to me, voice trembling. "I used BrightBridge every week to call her. I never knew it was you. No one ever mentioned—" "You never asked," I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Ethan opened his mouth, closed it again. That was the moment. A beat of quiet. Dense. Full. Then Ethan's boss leaned forward slightly, his tone suddenly inquisitive. "Did you say BrightBridge?" He glanced between Lauren and me. "We've been exploring tech literacy programs for our retirement communities. I think this could be a fit. Do you have a card?" I reached into my clutch, pulled out a matte, minimalist card. Off-white, embossed letters. I passed it to him without flourish. Patricia's fingers twitched on her napkin. Still, No words. Aunt Susan tilted her head, murmured under her breath, "That's actually incredible." Lauren turned back to me, slower this time. There was no politeness left, only curiosity, heavy and human. She studied me like she was learning to read a new version of a story she'd been told wrong. "Why didn't you say anything before?" I didn't blink. "Because it wasn't your question to ask," I said. Then I looked at her fully. "But now it's yours to answer." Sometimes apologies don't arrive in words. Sometimes they just stop being absent. The air outside Stonecraft was colder than I remembered. Winter in Chicago always had a way of wrapping around your ribs, a kind of chill that didn't just touch your skin, it pressed through it. We stood just beyond the private room, in the hallway that led to the coat room. The music from the main dining area was muffled by thick doors, like the world had gone soft to let us breathe. Ethan caught up with me near the coat rack. His tie was loosened, voice low. "I'm sorry. I never knew." I didn't look at him. I pulled my coat down from the hook slowly, folding it over one arm. "You never tried to," I said, flat. He flinched. Not outwardly, but something in his shoulders shifted. I could feel the guilt settling in his silence. He wasn't defensive, which was something, but he wasn't ready either. That was nothing new. Lauren appeared behind him, still in her coat, her cheeks tinged pink from emotion or wine. Maybe both. "I submitted that video," she said, voice soft. "The one with Ruth. It was just meant to say thanks. I didn't know. I had no idea the founder was you." I nodded. "You didn't need to." "She would have loved knowing," Lauren said, "that it came from someone real, from someone like you." She meant it kindly. I knew that. But the truth still stung. How easily I had been cut out of a story that was mine to begin with. Aunt Susan approached next. She held her purse with both hands like a shield, then leaned in with a tone that teetered between confession and disbelief. "Your mother told me," she said, "that you couldn't handle medicine. That it broke you." I turned to face her fully. Not angrily, just openly. "No," I said. I walked away because it didn't belong to me anymore. Susan blinked. There was something like shame on her face, but it wasn't hers to carry. She nodded once, as if giving something back she hadn't realized she took. Behind her, Gerald stood by the corner, not saying a word. His hands were in his coat pockets, and his gaze didn't quite meet mine. But he didn't look away either. That was new. Patricia hadn't moved. She remained by the far wall, glass of sparkling water in hand, untouched. Her posture was perfect. Her eyes never landed on me. The silence around her thickened with every passing minute. She was used to controlling a room with gestures, with language dressed in velvet. But tonight, her armor was cracking, small seams, not enough to collapse, but enough to show. I turned back to my coat, slid one arm in. Then I felt it. Her hand on my shoulder. Not heavy, not trembling, just there. She didn't say a word. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I let it happen. Not as forgiveness, not as a reconciliation, but as a moment. An interruption in the story she'd told so long, she believed it was truth. She let go first. I fastened the second button of my coat, adjusted the collar. No one spoke. The moment didn't demand it. Lauren reached out briefly, touched my elbow. "Text me when you land?" I nodded. Outside, the wind hit harder, but I welcomed it. It felt honest. Back in Portland 2 days later, I stepped over the threshold of my apartment, the scent of rain-damp petals greeting me from below. A thin stack of mail had accumulated by the door. Junk flyers, a utility bill, and then a cream envelope, heavy paper, my full name written in blue ink, elegant and unmistakable. Return address, P. Brooks. I stood there a moment, the door still open behind me, the sound of the street below fading into the quiet hum of what came next. You don't need to be loud to be right. You just have to stay standing long enough to be denied. The community center smelled faintly of overcooked coffee and dry erasers. Folding chairs had been arranged in neat rows, some wobbling gently on the uneven tile. I stood at the front of the room. No podium, just a collapsible table with a pot of wheat coffee and a tray of store-bought cookies. About 50 people had shown up. Retirees in quilted jackets, a librarian with rainbow pins on her lanyard, a high school girl seated beside her grandfather. Their faces weren't here for spectacle. They were here because BrightBridge had touched something they still held sacred: connection. I cleared my throat. "You don't always need to be understood to be needed," I began. The room stilled. I used to think success came with applause, with invitations, with being called upon. But sometimes it arrives in a quiet message, or in the fact that someone got to see their granddaughter graduate because they learned to use a Zoom link, or that they no longer feel stupid asking how to save a contact. Someone in the back chuckled softly. I let the silence linger. A hand rose. A woman in a gray cardigan. "Where did BrightBridge start?" she asked. I smiled. "In silence," I said. "It started in silence." Afterward, a few stayed behind to ask questions, swap stories. I stayed too, refilling coffee, nodding, listening. Marisol helped gather the remaining handouts, her arms full of printed guides and markers. "That was really good," she said, breathless. "They really got it." I nodded, tucking a loose curl behind my ear. "They always do," I said. "Eventually." By the time I reached my apartment, the clouds had thickened, dimming the daylight into something softer. The mail was still in a neat stack on the corner of my desk. I picked up the cream envelope last. My name had been written in full, the pen stroke elegant, deliberate. Evelyn Grace Brooks. I didn't sit. I just opened it right there, standing in the doorway with my coat still on. The letter was handwritten. One page. The paper weighty, textured. I watched the video Lauren submitted. I cried. Not because I didn't know what you built, but because I realized I never asked why you walked away. I was so focused on what you left behind, I never looked to see where you were going. You did something no one in this family ever dared. You failed. And then you kept going. In doing so, you gave people something I never knew they'd lost: the feeling of being connected, of being seen. There was no sign-off. No love, Mom, no apology. But folded inside the envelope was a notarized document. U.S. Trademark Certificate. BrightBridge trademark. Registered under my name alone. Tucked beside it, a yellow Post-it. In case someone tries to take credit someday. You earned this. I stared at the paper for a long moment, then walked over to my desk. Opened the top drawer. Inside sat the cherrywood USB. Smooth from years of handling. I placed the certificate and letter next to it. Not framed, not propped. Just there. Later that night, I opened the fridge door and taped a quote to its face. No signature. No explanation. They'll say you let them down, until they realize you were the one holding the light. In the reflection on the stainless steel, my face looked steady, full. Not because anyone had finally seen me, but because I'd finally stopped needing them to. Even in a room built to forget her, Evelyn didn't shout, didn't demand. She simply stood still long enough for the silence to fracture around her truth. Her triumph wasn't loud, but it was permanent. Not because she was finally celebrated, but because she no longer needed to be. This wasn't a story about revenge. It was about recognition. Earned, not granted. About how one woman chose to keep building, even when no one was watching, and how that quiet defiance lit the path others could finally see. Justice, when it arrives late, doesn't need spectacle. It needs presence. It needs someone who refuses to disappear just because others stopped looking. Like a tree growing in shadow, truth doesn't vanish. It roots deeper. And perhaps that's the lesson. When the world tells you that you failed, don't waste your voice defending the version they abandoned. Keep walking. Keep building. Eventually, the light finds you, because you became it.